distinct honor to introduce Prime Minister Mark Brown. The Honorable Mark Brown has been Prime Minister of Cook Islands since 2020, was first elected as Member of Parliament of the Cook Islands in 2010, general election, re-elected in the general elections of 2014 and 2018. He has served many years in the Cook Islands Government Public Service, including as the head of Ministry for Agriculture, as a senior policy advisor to the Prime Minister's office. Honorable Brown has attained his diploma in public sector management from Massey University in New Zealand and holds his master's in business administration from University of South Pacific in Fiji. And he is the chair of the Pacific Islands Forum, and which will be meeting in Rarotonga, Cook Islands in November. Prime Minister Mark Brown, you have the floor.
Excellencies, ladies and gentlemen, kia ora and warm Pacific greetings to you all. It's a wonderful honor to join at a distinguished gathering of individuals this afternoon to exchange views and learn from each other on the challenges faced and the solutions that we have trialed as ocean nations. Indeed, identity is a fundamental part of who we are as Pacific Islanders. We draw our identity from the ocean that we share, Te Moana Nui a Kiwa. It is the ocean that has defined our identity as a blue Pacific continent. Our history is synonymous with the ocean. We are a voyaging people who navigated our ocean and discovered our islands centuries ago. We are a resilient people whose cultures and traditions form the very fabric of societies from which we hail and on the values of whom we stand. Our history has shaped the journeys of the island countries in the Pacific. Through the era of colonization and our struggles for self-determination, which continue to be ongoing for some, through the era of nation building, through the era of nuclear testing and the lasting impacts of its legacy, the era of forging our collective regional identity, to our greatest struggle of all, the existential threat of climate change and sea level rise. It is through these lenses that it becomes apparent that for the Pacific, we do not have time to concern ourselves with geostrategic posturing, positioning, and influence, or to sail to the narrative of others. For us, our vision and ambitions are articulated through the 2050 strategy, and we will partner with all who are willing to engage with us on our terms and in alignment with our priorities. It is the only way that we can secure our blue Pacific continent. Therefore, when the Cook Islands saw the opportunity to assume the chair of the Pacific Islands Forum, I seized it, recognizing the importance of the time in which we exist and the lasting contribution that an island nation, such as the Cook Islands, can make to Pacific regionalism. It is no secret that the Pacific Island Forum has faced some of the more complex challenges in its history, especially in recent years. But true to our resilient values and founded on our traditional Pacific ways and customs, we have emerged from these challenges reaffirming our commitment to regionalism and our collective advocacy and actions. In parallel to this, we have come through some of the most difficult phases in our development journey as a region, as we continue to grapple with the lingering impacts and devastation of the COVID-19 pandemic on a day-to-day basis. In addition, we continue to witness increased strategic interest and geopolitical positioning in our region by external partners and interests, as we just heard recently from the previous speaker. This has materialized through heightened levels of engagement, both nationally and regionally. But whether this interest and engagement is in our favor as a region or aligned to our interests and priorities is another matter. It was with this in mind for the Pacific Island Forum Leaders Meeting that my government settled on the theme, Our Voices, Our Choices, Our Pacific Way. Promote, partner, prosper. The theme reaffirms my intent for the focus of the meeting. The upcoming leaders' meeting is an invaluable opportunity to reaffirm that our voices, our choices, and our Pacific Way are at the forefront of the region's journey to safe, resilient, and prosperous Pacific. In terms of the climate emergency, as we continue to navigate the interests of partners in the region, we simultaneously manage the ongoing climate emergency in our Pacific region. As a region, our position has been clear on this issue. Climate change is the single greatest existential threat to our region. We have taken steps as a region to prepare to protect our sovereignty and the future of our people into perpetuity. We have advocated actively at all levels to call on partners and major emitters to respond to and address the threats that we face on a day-to-day basis. What may be rhetoric for the many is a reality for us in the islands. Our sea levels are rising. The intensity and frequency of extreme climatic occurrences are a norm in our region. Saltwater intrusion into our water tables and arable lands are very real threats for us at the coalface of the climate emergency. And we have said this time and time again. We call on the partners to hear us. We call on partners to support our adaptation needs. We call on partners to recognize the loss and damage that we increasingly contend with as a result of this climate emergency. I have a young granddaughter who I hope will have the opportunity to enjoy life in the Cook Islands as I have, to bring up her own children in the customs and ways of life of our people on our land. Indeed, our efforts today is not for us or our generation. It is for our future that we work hard today to ensure that they have a fighting chance. With this in mind, and in consideration of our geostrategic environment, the time is ripe for the Pacific region to drive the progress of its priorities and aspirations. For far too long, we have been at the mercy of our partners, receiving what has been allocated us and contending with the challenges that we have had to face over the course of our history. Today, we stand at an unprecedented juncture in our history. The stars have aligned on three key areas of essential to advancing the Pacific interest. Firstly, the current geostrategic environment. Also, our political will as a region, including our efforts to define our collective vision and direction. And thirdly, a visible and vocal Pacific leadership. The alignment of the three essential elements underpin the importance of our strategic and efficient efforts to collectively progress our priorities in the interests of our people. To this end, I have conceptualized the Pacific Partnerships for Prosperity as part of my initiative as Forum Chair to shape and drive partners' interests in our region, to align with our priorities and integrate through our national and regional systems and processes. Excellencies, ladies and gentlemen, put simply, we have nothing to lose and everything to gain. But at the core of our success is, and always will be, our solidarity as a region. because it is only in our unity that we will remain effective globally. Indeed, the power of our advocacy, if strategically aligned, can influence and maneuver our multilateral processes in our interest. The world has seen the strength of the Pacific region's advocacy through the multilateral processes on climate, especially at COP21 in Paris, France. We have seen it on nuclear legacy issues, including the Rarotonga Treaty. Today, we are looking to our multilateral processes to overhaul and strengthen what has become a complex and overly bureaucratic development financing architecture. Ladies and gentlemen, I hope that through my reflections this afternoon, I have offered some food for thought on some of the topical issues at hand. That being said, I recognize that we will also have the opportunity of a bit of a moderated conversation after this to touch on issues that I may have missed in my remarks. So I thank you all for the opportunity to be here. Me te ki mata, thank you all very much.
Thank you so much, Prime Minister. That was a great overview of your role in your role in PIF, but as well as offering your own thoughts about the variety of views and perceptions in the region and on regionalism itself. Let me begin my conversation with you with a topic that I think that I have personally enjoyed hearing you speak at different forums on deep sea mining, if I may. There are a range of views on deep sea mining in the Pacific. This year particularly has been an important year for governance and debate and discussions on where that should go, how that should proceed, and what is at stakes. Given the impact of this conversation on both economics and the environment, would you tell us a little more about the conversation in the Pacific itself, but also in your role as the Prime Minister of the Cook Islands?
Sure. I think it's important to note that my country is 99.99% ocean.
Right.
So it's inevitable that we will turn to our ocean for our protection, for our prosperity. The Minerals Program provides us with an opportunity to provide a means to securing energy security for other countries in the world. It also provides a means for us to address climate security issues and economic security issues for our country. What we're on right now is a journey of discovery, so an exploration phase of our deep ocean, to get a better understanding of the biodiversity, the environmental impacts of any sort of activity that is undertaken in our deep ocean. We know that we have a world-class deposit of critical metals in our ocean. We know that the world faces a bottleneck in trying to transition to green energy from a carbon economy. And we'd like to see how we can play a role in the global supply chain to address those critical metal needs that are going to be needed in the next 5 years.
And if I may just stay on the same thread of conversation just for a second, in that it seems that the differing views are also either very much in favor or very much against. Could you tell us a little bit more in terms of the whole, the conversation on, of course, deep sea mining and its impact on environment, but then how, like you said, 99% of your region is water, so it's obvious that you'll turn to the oceans. But as we all know, oceans are the domain that's been least mapped and least understood as well. So in that capacity, in your role as PIF, but also in the Cook Islands' national interest, how would you make that argument or your conversation with your colleagues in the Pacific, but also globally, because there's a global conversation on where should deep sea mining go, recognizing the green transition, but also that people are pretty afraid to embark on that journey?
I think the important thing to understand is what we're undergoing is applying the precautionary principle
Right.
in the work that we're doing. We well understand that there is a need to gain knowledge and understanding before you take the next steps towards extracting or harvesting these minerals that are in the deep sea. Our approach has been in the Pacific to respect the sovereignty and independence of each individual country in the positions they take. So if I take an issue of something similar within our region of fisheries,
Right.
for example, for some of our member countries in the forum, fisheries plays an important part of their government revenues through licensing to distant water fishing nations. For some other members of our forum countries, they do not allow any sort of fishing activity to take place within their EEZs. So taking these two very different points of view, the region has managed this process, understanding that fisheries is a product that does go through all of our waters, through our EEZs. So a good framework for addressing the issues around sustainability of catch based on scientific evidence, a good framework on monitoring and surveillance to ensure that the value of that catch is maintained by mitigating or reducing the impacts of underreported or illegal fishing that takes place. And thirdly, ensuring that there is a fair return to member countries on the fish product that is taken out of their waters. Right. What we've managed as a region is to ensure that we now have the best managed tuna fishery in the world, with the best returns being provided to member countries, and the science that ensures the sustainability of our stocks. We can apply the same principles to the minerals sector in the deep ocean. And I have no doubt that these experiences that we've had in other sectors can apply equally well in this new and emerging area.
Thank you. That's a really productive approach, laying out on how to move forward on something that seems to be so contentious. Just a reminder to all of you watching online, if you have questions for Prime Minister Brown, please put in your questions in the chat box, and my team will pick it up. And for those of you here in person, there's a QR code by your seats, and you can put in your questions there, and it'll show up on my iPad. Could you share a little bit with us on your approach to balancing, because coming from, again, the theme of your role as Prime Minister of Cook Islands, but your current role in PIF is to balancing regional priorities and interests, which sometimes might differ slightly from say, national priorities, interests, or aspirations. And how do you balance that, given what you talked about in your speech on sort of the solidarity and the approach and the Pacific regionalism, but also the importance of agency and sovereignty?
Yes. I think our region, our Pacific leaders understand the importance of having a united and stable region. And that provides, if you like, the ability of the region to engage with partners, to try and develop and grow economically, to foster links, whether they be travel links or whether they be telecommunications links within the region. But that regional stability also acts as a support or a buffer if one of our countries goes through a period of national instability, as we have seen over the years. So having that regional stability is vitally important for us. One of the things, though, that we as a region in the Pacific greatly hold dear is each country's sovereign independence and their right to have a position that may be contrary to the position that the region would take. We're countries that have, as I mentioned, come out of colonization. Many of our countries are 50, 60, or less, 40 years old as nations. And the process of nation building, the process of establishing national identities, has taken place over a short period of time compared to other countries. So countries who have fought long and hard to gain their independence, they value that very strongly. And if they do have a view on a position that may not be with the regional view, it is something that the rest of our region accepts and respects, and at the same time expect that reciprocal respect on the region's position as well.
Thank you. You're headed to DC from here after the high-level week and a series of engagement. Could you share with us, both in terms of a preview of the summit, perhaps, what Cook Islands personally would like to come out of PIF's US summit, but also from PIF point of view? But if I may also tag along that same question to say your thoughts on Cook Islands potentially becoming a full member of the UN someday.
Sure. Okay, there's two questions here.
Yes.
From the Cook Islands perspective, we look forward to the summit next week. and look forward to establishing formal diplomatic relations with the US. And we would welcome the US as the 62nd member to have that we have formal relations with. It's important, as I said, as part of our maturity and development as a sovereign state, to have these relationships with other countries. In terms of the United Nations membership, I see that as a natural progression, again, of how our country has steered its sovereignty over the last 60 years. It will be in 2025. So we're also members of a number of international institutions of the United Nations, like the WHO, FAO, and others. So we're no strangers to be sitting at these global organizations and being an effective member and having our voice heard. The importance of, excuse me, being at the UN is precisely that, is that we are there at the table and we are able to speak in our own voice. Not this voice, unfortunately, I'll have something there. But we're able to speak in our own voice at these large international forums. For the region, I think the second summit that we're having next week is important to build on that engagement of in the first summit, where the US has announced its engagement, re-engagement, if you like, back into the Pacific region after an absence to many other countries for decades. And one of the things that we hope that the US will recognize and understand, and I was very encouraged by the words of the Deputy Secretary just prior, is the Pacific of the 1990s is very different from the Pacific of 2020 now. Again, I refer back to the theme of our Forum Leaders meeting in November. Our voices, our choices.
Right.
Our Pacific countries have been engaging with a number of countries globally to try and address their development needs, to try and help them meet their priorities, to lift the well-being of their people. So we look forward to this engagement with the US. The US's first steps since the last year was to increase its presence in the region with the opening of a few embassies. Their formal diplomatic relations with us is another step in that increased presence in the region. But for the Pacific region, we are now looking for more tangible engagement in how do we improve the economic regrowth of our countries through increased and improved transportation links. How do we partner with the US in areas of increased trade, as mentioned, where some of our Pacific countries rely on trade for their economies. So we look forward to this summit coming up with some optimism. And again, listening to Deputy Secretary's words, there is something that we can look forward to and discuss with the US in their re-engagement back in the Pacific.
Thank you, Prime Minister. Actually, some of the audience have started sending us a few questions, and I know you have a hard stop in about 5 minutes, and I promise to stick to it, and I will. One question. Let me actually combine the two questions, since we only have about 4 minutes left. You talked about being encouraged by Deputy Secretary's remarks about the Pacific and recognizing the differences between the last century and today. Are there specific areas, you just mentioned trade, but are there specific areas that you would like to see US government engage in a particular way, not just in the Pacific, but particular to Cook Islands' interest and priorities, say for the next, in the midterm, in 5 to 10 years? And in the interest of time, just one more question added to it is, we've had a series of really senior leadership across both Indian Ocean and Pacific speak with us today, and the issues that has emerged and re-emerged through all conversations have been climate change and accessibility to climate finance, illegal fishing. These are some of the issues that have come up. Are there any unique issues which have not yet been raised or that you think deserve that conversation or should be raised while talking about small island states and its engagement with big powers?
I think it's been well covered by a number of leaders and quite a number of discussions that we've had in the lead up to General Assembly, but also in the lead up to the summit that we're going to have next week. There's no doubt climate change is a critical factor for Pacific Island countries. Earlier this year, was it last year, the declaration on the recognition of our maritime boundaries in the event of climate change, sea level rise, to maintain those boundaries. This year was discussion on a declaration again to recognize the statehood and sovereignty of countries in the face of climate sea level rise. Quite drastic declarations when you come to think of it that we're putting in place to recognize peoples whose islands are going to disappear from the impacts of climate change. What we'd like to see is strong advocacy from the likes of the United States and other countries in recognizing that countries that may be subjected to getting underwater, their territories do not disappear. Their people do not become stateless. So there are discussions around the mobility due to climate impacts and the framework on how that's going to work. What we'd like really from the US is strong advocacy. Climate finance, you mentioned, is critically important. Next month is the pledging conference to be held in Germany for the Green Climate Fund. A number of European countries have made strong commitments towards increasing or doubling their contributions to GCF. The US is seen as a world leader, so to demonstrate its leadership by making significant contributions to the Green Climate Fund, and then subsequently to other funds that need to be satisfied as well, would demonstrate to us the US commitment towards the issues that we find important: climate change, climate security, and of course economic security, which is critically important. An economically secure region is a stable region.
Thank you so much, Prime Minister Brown. Any last thoughts, parting remarks that you might have for the audience here, but also watching it online, as at least the conversation in US is getting more and more interesting on the interest in through the re-engagement in the Pacific, across islands, issues of blue economy, issues of ocean economy, as well as climate. So any issues that you would like to raise, anything in your closing remarks to the audience here before we bring it to a close?
I think to make our discussions useful in Washington and here at the General Assembly as well, is to look back at just the last year on what Pacific countries have been talking about, what has been important for them. And a lot of it is around financing, the state that we're in coming out of COVID, issues around debt, sustainability, debt management, maybe debt restructuring, to cover past issues that we're now finding ourselves in. And then into the future, future financing models that make things accessible for Pacific countries to try and regrow their economies. Again, we've spoken about regrowing your economy in the face of significant climate impacts that hit us every year. We're starting to see those impacts in now developed countries and larger countries. Flash flooding occurrences are more and more common and so deadly, as we saw in the Libya floods just a couple of weeks ago. We've seen the same thing happen over and over the last year in many other modern countries. We've been having that for years. So what we need is, when we're building our economies, we need to take into account the impacts of current climate. So resilience in the impacts of our economic growth, resilience built into infrastructure investment that's still ongoing for us. We hope that these messages that we've been talking about, not just the last year, for the last 10 years, resonate with the people that we're going to be talking to, so that we don't have to repeat ourselves again.
Absolutely. Point well taken. Thank you so much, Prime Minister. Please join me in thanking Prime Minister Mark Brown for this really exciting discussion. Thank you for taking time today. tomorrow. For closing remarks, I would like to introduce, I think, who will be joining us live from Tokyo, Dr. Hide Sakaguchi, who's the president of Ocean Policy Research Institute of the Sasakawa Peace Foundation, to offer his closing remarks first. And I think he should be on the screen momentarily. I'll just give it a few seconds. There he is. Sakaguchi-san, the floor is yours. Thank you for joining us so bright and early from Tokyo to offer your closing remarks. Over to you.
Thank you very much. Dear Excellencies, distinguished guests, ladies and gentlemen, good afternoon in New York and good morning from Tokyo, Japan. First of all, I would like to thank all of you for your participation today, both in person and online, for long hours at the third annual Indo-Pacific Island Dialogue, jointly organized by the Carnegie Endowment for International Peace and the Sasakawa Peace Foundation. Here, it is my great honor to give you these concluding remarks from the standpoint of the Sasakawa Peace Foundation first. Again, my name is Hide Sakaguchi, President of the Ocean Policy Research Institute and Executive Director of the Sasakawa Peace Foundation. Unfortunately, I had my heart operation last week in Japan, and my doctor stopped me having overseas trip for a while until it settled down. Then please forgive me for attending this important event through online today. As we all learn today in this room, there exists wide diversity of problems, such as climate change-induced issues, IUU fishing, financing program against pandemic, and waste management, security issues, and etc., and the strategy to solve these problems in the Indo-Pacific island. And then we need to speak out them and let other countries and let other people to be aware of them. Actually, last month, Ms. Darshana Baruah of the Carnegie Endowment for International Peace, who is just moderating now and also moderated previous sessions, visited Sasakawa Peace Foundation in Tokyo, and we had a deep discussion together. Then we both fully agreed with the aim of and the purpose of this dialogue today, which is to listen to the challenges actually faced by people of the island countries and bring their voices to the people of the developing partners, including the United States and Japan. And I myself have visited countries in the Pacific and Indian Oceans for the last few years, talked with the government officials and experts, and look at local issues through my own eyes and to see how we can really deliver local situation to the world and think about solving them. This March, I visited the Maldives and found various issues around fisheries, coastal tourism, maritime transport, and marine pollution. Even before the United Nations warned out the dangers of climate change, the Maldives had been complaining about the risk of sea level rise due to global warming, and now it happened. I respect these voices, and I am committed to working with you to see how our institute, together with Carnegie Endowment and our foundation, can amplify the voices of the island countries. Supported by the Nippon Foundation, our mother foundation, we, Sasakawa Peace Foundation, have been promoting mutual understanding between Japan and Indo-Pacific island countries, strengthening human resources for maritime security and community-based ecotourism, with the focus on Pacific Island countries. We have also conducted surveys, research, and policy dialogues to promote the blue economy and have provided practical knowledge to policymakers and practitioners. We will continue to develop our project on islands, conduct research on the impact of climate change and resilience building, and take action together with island countries globally. This dialogue will continue tomorrow. Our researchers will participate in a session titled High-Level Dialogue on Blue Economy and Climate Action to discuss this topic, and we look forward to hearing the island people's views and perspectives on the islands. The Sasakawa Peace Foundation, together with the Carnegie Endowment for International Peace, will actively contribute to the compilation and dissemination of the result of this important dialogue. And we look forward to sharing with you the next steps dialogue. I thank you very much and looking forward our prosperous future. Thank you.
Thank you so much. Thank you so much, Sakaguchi-san. It is my distinct pleasure today to thank you all for being here in my closing remarks. We started the first edition of the Indo-Pacific Islands Dialogue in 2021 at a time where I definitely thought we were on the other side of COVID when we got hit with Omicron and Delta. 2022 was the first time I think we were doing this dialogue amidst when UN was reconvening in sort of the post-COVID world. So this year I feel like is this year that we get a true sense of how these conversations are going to go. But it's been absolutely wonderful working on this dialogue and to see the leaders from different island nations come through to speak here and share their perspectives. And I think the conversations through the day have definitely highlighted the issues that are front and center for island nations. And I think these are not conversations that most of us are not aware of, but perhaps we do not look at it from the view of small island developing nations. And what Prime Minister Brown mentioned struck me particularly when he said that we raised the issue and that we don't feel the need to keep repeating it over and over again. And I think we play as much of a part in that as part of the research and strategic community to understand some of the issues that has been raised and take that forward in our conversation. So it is our effort to continue this conversation through this annual convening. We definitely hope to see you continue engagements, but let me begin by thanking our distinguished guests from both the Indian Ocean and Pacific Oceans at the leadership level, as well as ambassadors who took their time out in this busy UN week to come speak with us, braving the rain that New York decided to shower us with. To the audience in person and online, thank you for sitting with us. Thank you for engaging, for all of the conversations and questions and contributing to the discussions and dialogue. To the two institutes, Carnegie Endowment for International Peace and the Sasakawa Peace Foundation, without whose institutional support and leadership this would not be possible. It is easy to come up with idea, it's harder to execute it. So really appreciate the two institutes and the support behind it. But let me take this moment, the closing last few minutes, to really thank the team behind it, who you probably haven't seen and haven't seen their faces, but who really run the whole show and have been instrumental in making everything happen today. Let me begin with a colleague who's actually going to leave us after the third annual Indo-Pacific Islands Dialogue. I'm not sure it was the Islands Dialogue that led to her exit from Carnegie, but and the stress of it. But she has absolutely been instrumental in bringing this together. I do not see any one of them here, but let me nonetheless give a shout out to Catherine Buchanan, who's our lead in events and who has really helped me think through how to put this together, how to run this, and bringing it from an idea in paper and putting it in practice. But the rest of the team, who for many of whom it's been the first time, Aislinn Familati, Jessica Greeley, Alex Taylor, Caroline Mallory, Mackenzie Susler, and Mira Verghese. To our partners in Japan Society for allowing us to use this venue. Without this, I think it would be really hard for a lot of the leaders to walk over and manage their times at the UN. So thank you very much, and we look forward forward to this partnership. To our partner, Sasakawa Peace Foundation, thank you very much. There's a team working equally hard behind from Tokyo. And some of you are in the audience here that I see, but of course, Sakaguchi-san, Dr. Sanami, who's the president of SPF, who opened the dialogue, Atsushi Watanabe-san, Hitomi-san, Hideyuki Shiozawa-san, Kobayashi-san, thank you very much for your support and coming down to New York and helping us in do this. We do, as Dr. Sakaguchi mentioned, this is an effort that we aim to continue and build on, and I hope you will continue to engage with us through conversation, through dialogue, through research, and supporting us in taking this conversation far and wide, so island nations, like Prime Minister Mark Brown said, don't have to keep repeating the same issues they've brought up over and over again. Thank you very much. Again, please join us in the foyer for some drinks and snacks. Thank you.